after having the installation um, put up at the airport, I was really raring to go again and do another public oriented piece. And I got the opportunity to do so again in the spring of 2019 for a festival here in Philadelphia called the Tiny Room for Elephants Festival. It was an art and music festival that was held on the Cherry Street Pier along the Delaware River here in Philadelphia. Basically, it was a big art and music festival where invited artists were given huge walls. So, like the wall that I had was a 10 by 12 foot wall. So they were either 10 by 12 foot or it was like 10 by 6. So, but I was able to have one of the 10 by 12 foot walls, and this was really exciting because yeah, I had already had exposed the glyph idea in a very public space, and I was feeling really good about this new work, and this was another one of those situations where we were all making art in this huge cavernous space, while the public was also walking around, during the time that we were making these pieces. So that was pretty interesting. I was working, I had a day job as well. So I would usually go there in the evenings after my job was over. They kept the pier open until about 10 o'clock at night. And I usually got off like around about, on the days I was able to get off around about 5 or 6 or something like that, I went over there. And on the weekends, I went over there. So, um, but this was really exciting though, because this was like, really out in the public where like, like really random people would like come through the space. Whereas in the airport, it was very specific, it was like people who were traveling. But here it was just like anybody could come through the space, throughout the day. So there was like the potential for a much wider audience to come in and see what you were doing. So in this slide here, this is just me in the very beginning stages of making this piece. I'm just like laying on the floor and just going at it. This is another view of me making this piece, and these photographs were taken by Beaumont Originals here. They were documenting this whole festival, and they really did a good job of documenting all of our work and everything. But this gives you an idea of all the layering that was going on. There was a lot of, like in this piece in particular, I used collage elements, I used stenciling, I used direct drawing, I used paint, I used paint markers, and as well as graphite, but mostly paint markers and paint. And this was another one of those situations where I had to have, my stuff with me, so I had to make up a, quote unquote mobile studio again and bring all my stuff with me. I have a number of cats. I'm a cat father, and so what I did is I saved a couple like large cat litter bins, washed them out and everything after they were empty, and just and I would take all the stuff that I needed, put them in those bins, along with a couple of other bags, and just throw them in the car and just take them over there. So this was really kind of exciting because, again, I got to like be out in public, making work that a wide audience could see. So, it was out of the gallery context, which was really kind of exciting for me. I mentioned in the last slide that there were collage elements, and this gives you an idea of what I was doing ahead of time. So before I began the piece, once I knew I was in the festival and I was going to get a wall. Um, I started out by making some drawings on tracing paper, um, so that I could drawing and stenciling. So there's stenciled elements here with that design, and then there's also drawn elements, the glyphs and everything there that are sandwiched between these two other pieces here. So this is just a small sample of what I took with me over there, and so I would tear these up, and I would place them in different areas of the piece as I saw fit. So I took a whole. I don't know. I probably had like 20 or 30 different drawings with me on these large sheets of tracing paper that I had on a roll, and I used matte medium to adhere them to the plywood. So the wall was made out of thin plywood that was supported in the back. And here's my one of my assistants, studio assistants. This is Sydney, taking a nap on some of the drawings that I was making. If you look at this gives you like another clear view of the glyph markings that I make. And ever since the beginning of me like experimenting with this form of mark making, I've always formed them into grid like formations, and I guess that's reflective of me wanting them to reflect a kind of language or something. I mean, that much is clear to me now, but previously, earlier, like I didn't quite know why I was doing that. I mean, there was something about it that's aesthetically pleasing to me as well. There's an order to it. There's these blocks of like these different letters, not letters, but of marks. I should also note that all of these glyphs are like spontaneously made. None of them, some of them may look similar, but none of them look alike. They're like snowflakes in that way. And the other thing about them is that I'll make them, so I'll make one row, and then I'll drop down. I'll make one row to the left and move to the right, rather, and then drop down. And then the next row, I'll make them moving to the left. And so there's this constant sort of like, you know, S formation that's going on when I'm making it. You can't tell once they're done, but, just to give you some insight, that's what happens. So I make one and I make the next one, make the next one, and drop down and do the whole process again until I'm finished with that particular grid. Sometimes they wind up in grids of, say like 12 or something like that, or sometimes it's just like maybe 9 of them in a grid, or or whatever. And I also make them separate as well. I make like couplets, they'll be two together, duos, two together in different places, or three together in different places, or something like that. But a large part of what I do is they wind up in grids like this. So this is the full piece here. Again, this is 10 by 12 feet, and it's called Ode TRFE 19. That's Tiny Room for Elephants, 2019. And again, this is named after the place that it was made. Basically, I didn't know what else what else to name it. But but Ode felt right for this. I don't know why, but it did. Um, So yeah, so there's all sorts of in this piece. There's all sorts of there's drawing, there's layers of the glyphs, there's these lines that are going across, and it's you can't really tell here, but some of those light lines that you see that look white, those are actually silver. So that's like a silver acrylic marker that I was using in this, along with the black and the grays that happen throughout. Yeah, this was like another piece that I'm really proud of, and this was actually sold late last year, which is also great because I didn't have anywhere to store it anyway. So um, thankfully, someone saw the value in it and purchased it. Later last year, in the fall of 2019, I had an opportunity to make another on-site temporary installation, and this one was in a place that normally you wouldn't think of, but maybe nowadays, but normally you wouldn't think of something like this happening. But I was invited by someone that I knew who worked there and who had been making shows in this space for a while. So the space was this place called Pogenpol, which is a Germany-based kitchen design firm. Uh, so the person that I knew who worked there, they told me that they had sold a demo kitchen, one of the kitchens they had in the showroom, and they had this big space in the back of the showroom. And so he asked me if I would be interested in, putting some work up or doing something with the space, and I like jumped on it and said, yeah. um, I did because after coming out of the Tiny Room for Elephants piece, I was itching again to make another piece in a different space, and this space was presented a different challenge in the sense that it had a 13-inch setback. So basically, it was a big alcove. So it was roughly um, like 8 by 13 feet, 8 feet high by 13 feet wide, with a 13-inch setback, as you can see here in this slide. And so that presented a different challenge than the other pieces that were all flat. I had to find a way to work with that setback. And so what I did, again, just like with the Tiny Room for Elephants piece, I made a bunch of drawings ahead of time in my studio here, knowing that I would change them, probably rip them apart and add other stuff on top of it. Plus, I had to figure out as I was going along. I had to figure out how to make use of, this, this space that was much more, three-dimensional than I had previously worked with. So a part of my way of solving that was taking different elements. And in this case, I use paper as a support, but I also used, if you look over to the right-hand side there, that's a piece of clear acetate that I had drawn with paint on, and then rubbed some of the paint out. So that gives you this like dark, smoky sort of look. But otherwise, it was clear. I also used this mylar. If you look over to the left, on the left hand side here, that's a piece of burnished like silver mylar. So I took and used sandpaper or steel wool actually on the surface. So it sort of like took away some of the sheen, but still left me with an interesting surface there. So in addition to the paper and other things that I was using, I brought these other materials in as well. So while I was making this piece, I brought all this material with me, but I also made some of the work there while I was, in the space, which was also very exciting. It's this is that's the part that I like. I like responding to the space. It takes advantage of my habit of like being spontaneous, and going with a like a call and response action with the work, where I do something and then I respond to that, and I keep responding until I get to a point where I feel like, okay, if I do one more thing, this thing is going to fall apart. I like coming up to that edge with the piece. So anyway, once again, I made a bunch of stuff at home. I brought it to the space and started constructing it. So this is like the very beginning of it here. I had three large works on paper in the background, and I was just starting to like work with this space a little bit and figuring out how to use that setback. This is another view of a couple of the clear acetate pieces that I was using, just showing a clearer idea of like some of the glyphs along with like other drawn elements that I used. So in a large part of this, um, I let some pieces sort of like droop and make different sorts of shapes. I would push them in different directions to make them like sort of come out from the wall a little bit. Another thing about hardware is that I love hardware. I love screws and nails and things of that nature. So in making this piece, I use screws, I use magnets, I use tape. And I think those are the main things that I use to adhere pieces to the wall and to other bits and pieces of this particular um, installation. And this is a full view of the piece. It's called "You Don't Know the Whole Thing." And so this stayed up installed for about 2 months, I think. I think almost 3 months, actually. And so we had an opening and everything. And yeah, this was very different. And as you can see, as I previously mentioned, there's a lot of elements that sort of like are coming off of the wall. It's hard to tell in this picture, but there's some things that are attached to. There's some pieces that are attached to other pieces with like tape, and again I use nails and other sorts of things to adhere things to. I wanted to have a feeling that this was quickly put together. Even though it wasn't, it took me a while to get everything situated the way I want it. But I really like a sort of, I didn't want a uniform way of attaching things to the wall, or to attaching individual pieces to other pieces as well. So I did everything I could to sort of like, it was just another way of me bringing the viewer in. So like when you went up to this piece, you would find all these like little different things that were going on besides the visual gymnastics that were happening. So part of the title of "You Don't Know the Whole Thing" has to do with the breaking up of the space, having similar elements go throughout the piece that appear and then disappear and then reappear in like weird juxtapositions in different places and everything. There's a breaking up of the space, referencing the breaking up of time, and also and of time and space in the same area. But another thing that happened during the making of this is like towards the end, on the extreme left hand side, I had a piece of paper that I decided like there was I thought there was too much uniformity going across the top of the piece, so I decided to take one end of one of the large drawings that I had done, and instead of having it be straight up, I moved it down. So I unpinned it from the wall, and sort of moved it down so that it bowed out from the wall. And then I realized I had this cavern like space over there. And so when someone would be looking at the piece, they get over to that side, to that left hand side, and there'd be no payoff if there was nothing there. So I got the idea to put a painting there. So what I did is the night before the night that I was making this, and I had made that decision, I came back to the studio and quickly made like a new small painting, which is what you see here, the yellow base painting here, and hung that behind in that space, so you couldn't see it right away, and I didn't tell people that it was there. During the opening, I sort of like let some people know, but there were no instructions for people to look for it or anything. I wanted it to reflect, a lot of times what we see like in the streets when we walk around. A lot of times we're surprised by something. Suddenly there'll be some something on the ground, or there'll be like you'll turn a corner and there'll be a sign that's half torn up or something. I wanted this to sort of reflect that energy, that energy of like being surprised by something, in your environment, that, you may not have noticed before. And the title, "You Don't Know the Whole Thing," also references other things that come into play for me, in my mind, that have to do with identity, that have to do with just sometimes not even like knowing who someone is. Like you never like necessarily know like the full story of a person, because you might know them as a teacher, you might know them as a lover, you might know them as you might know them as a distant relative or something like that. And all those things sort of like come into play, but like not everybody gets to know a person from all of those angles. You someone from your particular interactions with them, in particular context, which I think is a pretty interesting thing, when it comes to identity, because you may ask someone like, who is someone, or who are you, and that answer could be, could feel like an encyclopedia full of information. So anyway, that's where that title came from, and those are some of the ideas that surround it. So I want to take a moment and go into another layer of something that informs my work, and which happens to be photography. And this all ties in together with what's come before and what's coming next. I happen to be one of those people who will walk around, and I tend to like notice all sorts of things in the streets. And I will take pictures of them. Like for instance here, this is a sign, obviously, and that's, there's graffiti all over it, but this plays into part of what informs my visual world, in terms of like the layering that goes on, and like there's like several different people here who have thrown up tags on this sign, and all of it comes together to make, it started out as this sign, but then it winds up being the sign, plus everything else. um, if you look at if you look at my work, there's a lot of layering going through. And that's something that goes back to, a long time ago. But I started noticing more and more as I walk around. I started noticing that same sort of thing happening. This overlapping of what I consider anonymous art making and anonymous lives that coexist in the streets in places like this, where you have people throwing up tags and they're tagging over other tags, and then in some cases, people will throw up a poster. Part of that will get ripped away. You'll see some of the graffiti underneath, and then someone will tag over there. Then somebody will buff everything out. Then the whole cycle will start again. And then at some point, someone will like start tearing stuff apart, or the weather will like wear away at a space on the wall, and then you have all of these intersections of different people's lives coming together, and you don't know exactly who did what. All you see are like bits and pieces of like words and images that have built up over time, in these different places, but you don't necessarily know who did all of that. So there's this conglomeration of different public lives, private lives, in a public space. So it's sort of like a residue. I look at it as like the residue of of human existence, where we as humans we leave our mark everywhere, on the earth, and in the cities we build. It's always there, and I've always been fascinated by the fact that we tend to gravitate towards making our existence known, to the greater world, in some sort of public way. And a lot of people do that through graffiti, or through street art or whatever. So I always find these things sort of fascinating. So the next few slides, you can take your time and look through them, but they all sort of like reflect some of the same things that I'm seeing out in the streets. I have to tell you, I love it when I come across, street markings that are like this was part of a parking lot, actually, and I love coming across where I see street markings that have been paved over, and so there's part of one, and then there's the new one that's over it, and there's this line that, like, here there's this line that comes through, there's this like oppositional rectangle, part of a rectangle that goes through here. And so there's these things, these like combinations of elements that I see a lot of times that look like unintentional art to me. They look like art to me, and I get really excited when I see these sorts of things. So I'm always taking pictures of stuff like this. This is a photograph from Guadeloupe. My girlfriend and I went to Guadeloupe in 2018, I think it was. Yeah, 2018. And yeah, so this was the one of the this was just like one of the many photographs that I took on that trip. And this shows, this gives you an idea of what I was explaining earlier about, someone throwing up tags, and it looks like someone obviously had painted over some of these, and some of it got worn away, and then people kept writing on top of that. So and so it gets, again, you see this sort of like anonymous art making happening, and unintentional art happening. In a very public space. And this is an example of this is a close up of graffiti on I think this is on a truck. Yeah, this was on the side of a truck. Um, And I again, this is like a detail of something that was there, and I'm always like excited to find these different sort of things happening. Here there's some scratching going on. There's these you can see some letters at the top here that sort of like come down into the frame a little bit. There's all these like these semicircles and soft edges that are happening, and against this like harsher sort of surface. Again, this is just like stuff that this really I just really enjoy seeing from time to time. So I have the photographs that I take. I post them on Instagram a lot, and I also have saved some. If you go to my website, there's a section called Daily Observations, and that gives you. I think I put up like 20 something photographs, similar to the ones in this section here, that reflect my interest in what I see around me in the environment, and how, and all this stuff informs what I do in my work. It just doesn't, it doesn't come across exactly the same. I consider the photographs to be a completely separate thing, but they do inform what I make in the studio and out. So this brings me to my piece "Until the Break of Dawn," which is installed at Towson University, and this piece presented its own challenge in the sense that one, the wall was bigger than I thought it was, and I really thought I hadn't brought enough material with me once I saw it and walked around it a little bit. And that brings me to the next point, is that this is a three-dimensional piece. I had to work on all four sides and figure out how to bring everything together. So this was like just another challenge. I'm always up for these sort of challenges, and this definitely brought it for me. But I was up to the task. I just looked at it and just started having fun with it. So I brought a whole bunch of I brought a whole bunch of drawings that I'd done ahead of time. I knew that things would change once I got into the space, and had to figure out like what to do with the particular space. Um, but yeah, so I started off with like a line drawing with markers, and then I started in with my glyph forms in different colors, and repeating colors in different places, and um, making different numbered grids, and just starting that process of making layers. So as I'm doing this, I'm thinking, I'm trying to figure out like what my next moves are going to be. So I'm beginning that like call and response process that I go through. This is me figuring out what to do. um, yeah, so once again, I made use of clear acetate and other materials. As I was making the piece, things changed from my original concept of what I was thinking I was going to do. Once I got to the space and saw the wall and whatnot, I decided to make use of a lot of the paper drawings that I had brought with me, but also made a lot of use of I wanted more of the transparent elements to be a part of this particular piece. So that's part of what you see me here doing, is positioning this particular piece on the edge of this wall, And again, I'm looking for ways to energize this wall and make it, less flat. Um, well, not make the wall less flat. The wall is going to be flat, but just to make to give that space a different sort of dynamic. Um, than just being like the four walls only, bringing other elements to and positioning them so that um, there's different ways of seeing things that are going on this piece. So this is another view of it. This is one side of it, and again, multiple ways of using the glyph images, big against small. Cool colors against warm. Opaque and transparent. All of these things are coming in together. There's repeats of things. I'm drawing directly on the wall, and I'm using tape. If you look closely, I don't know if you can see it or not, how well you can see it, but in the middle there's a section of red glyphs, and I use this metallic tape to like sort of like strike through some of that. So there's all these little things that are going on. There's also over to the left hand side here. There's a little piece of pink tape that's holding a piece of acetate to a piece of paper that's there. And again, up towards the top there's this like wavy form. So I've made this acetate. I've buckled it a little bit just and pinned it so that there's this other shape. There's this wavy sort of shape with the drawings that's on it, creating a whole other element. And again, you can see through the clear acetate or the areas of the clear acetate and see the drawing underneath. And then with the lighting, this is something else that I noticed. Once everything was done, the lighting wasn't quite set up yet for to show this piece, but even with what was there, just seeing the light hit the paper and all the shadows, all the shadows cast, and that they make a whole other layer to this that I wasn't even expecting previously. And here we are. We are at the end. So yeah, this is a view of at least one side, one and a half sides of the piece. And this gives you like a longer view of what's going on here. I titled this "Until the Break of Dawn" because number one, I'm riffing off of the show's title, "All Night Party." So I didn't know what I was going to title it, but halfway through, I was like, "Oh man, this makes so much sense." Um, for me, anyway. I wanted something that reflected the energy of having been out, all night. You've been dancing. It's tired. You might have like going through the night and might be reflecting back on bits of conversations or some looks that you might have given somebody, or glances, or you remember seeing like bits and pieces of people's faces or whatever, so you're at that point in the night where like things are done, but you're still sort of energized, from what's been going on. So I just sort of wanted to bring some of that, like that party feeling to this, and that that sort of like light energy, that energy that you like feed off of when you're when you're out in the world and you're like maybe with friends or even with strangers, and you're just like you're dancing or whatever, you're having a ball, you're just letting go. This is your chance to like get the week away from you, out of you, and just do what you want to do and be happy. So I just wanted to sort of try and capture some of that energy with this. Looking back on it, with 2020 vision, no pun intended. There's probably some other things I would have done, but that might be something for the next piece that comes down the pike. But I'm extremely happy with this piece, and I'm extremely honored and grateful to even have the opportunity to do something like this during this time. Having a chance to go somewhere and make a piece and be a part of a show like this. So once again, I want to thank Susan and Aaron for inviting me and for setting up the show. And congratulations to all the other artists. I can't wait to see all the work together. I hope everything, I'm pretty sure everything will look great together. So yes, I guess this brings me to the end of my talk. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope I didn't bore you. I hope I've given you some insight into what I do and why I do it and what led me to this point. So I hope this talk has given you some insights to that, and yeah. So thank you. And so in the next slide, there's some information about where you can find me online. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about that a little bit, and that'll be it. Okay, we're at the very, very end, the final end, I promise. Anyway, so this is, where you can find me online. It's my website, timmcfarlane.com. You can find me on Instagram. I'm very, I'm on there all the time. I am constantly posting there. That's where I do most of my social media engagement. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, but Instagram is where you'll find like most of my stuff, and most of it is art related. You'll find some of my cats in there, and other things. I also have a separate page for photography. That's called Tim McFarlane Photo. And if you go to my link tree, you see the link there. If you go to Linktree, there's a whole like bunch of like links to different things, interviews, reviews, not reviews, but recent artist profiles and things of that nature, and links to other stuff that I'm doing. So, and also there's a link there for my newsletter. You can, if you want to, you can sign up for my newsletter. I send out a newsletter about once seasonally, basically. So 4 times a year, roughly. If there's other things going on, I might send out a short email here and there, but for the most part, it's like roughly like 4 times a year. But check me out on Instagram. That's where you'll find like more day-to-day stuff, behind the scenes kind of things. So once again, thank you very much. Thank you to Susan and Aaron and Michael and Yao and Julia and everybody. So thank you once again. And take care. Be well. Be safe.